Hey, what's happening?
Yeah, we told you guys before, if you got to see it, that we're having a very, very special guest on today. His name is Lawrence Bartley, and we want you to remember that you can see us on YouTube as well. This is an important show that you will want to see on YouTube. We've been asked to be a part of the Day of Empathy, and from Van Jones. And so today we're having a special show on prison reform.
I get it. Day of Empathy has been scheduled. This is, I think, the second annual celebration of that. And it's a day where we focus on criminal justice system and the necessary changes that need to be done there, prison reform, issues in prison. And this is kind of thing where we want to have sensitivity so that people can be aware of it, and then we can move forward to make changes in these necessary areas.
Exactly.
For himself.
Yeah,
so there he is. All right.
Lawrence!
Hey!
You're in the
Yeah.
car?
Too. Okay.
I'm in the car. I'm in the car.
Gosh. Do you have enough bars in there?
Yeah, I have enough bars.
Okay, so we want to make sure you've got a good connection. Lawrence, Clyde wrote something about you, and I want to read it so people can know a little bit who you are. And it's like, okay, so here we go with my reading part. As we look forward to the Day of Empathy on next Tuesday, we're talking to Lawrence Bartley, the founder and director of News Inside, the print publication of the Marshall Project, which is distributed in hundreds of prisons and jails throughout the U.S. Mm-hmm. News Inside was the recipient of the 2020 Izzy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Independent Media and Accomplished Journalism in your own right. You are a member of the team, and am I saying it right? Is it Zoe or Zoo? Zoe?
The Zoe.
The Zoe, okay, which was the winner of the 2020 Online Journalism Award for Excellence, and also an innovation in visual digital storytelling. And also, what do we really know about politics of people behind bars? So without further ado to you all, we'd like to introduce you to Mr. Lawrence Bartley. Okay. How you doing? You had any of that pepper pot stew?
I wish I did. But that pepper pot stew would have warmed me up just like this warm reception I just received. So
thank you. You're in New York, right?
Actually, I'm in Connecticut.
No, that's right, Connecticut. So you're getting a little of the cool weather. So tell us a little bit about the Marshall Project. What is that exactly?
Well, the Martian Project is a nonprofit, nonpartisan news organization that reports on the criminal justice in the United States. We've been around for about 6 years, but we're the youngest news organization to ever win a Pulitzer Prize. We won it in our first year. Thank you. And we won a whole host of awards since then every year. And we are a national organization. We have reporters in LA and New Orleans. We have people in DC, New York, all over the country, Texas. Yeah. I don't want to leave anybody out, but we're all over the place. And there's some smart reporters and staff and our business side as well on our team. And it's a joy to be a part of an organization that looks to get into the nitty-gritty of criminal justice and inform the population.
Oh, I see. So you're there, a bunch of journalists who tell us what's going on in prisons and the whole criminal justice. So the news we get a lot of times is coming from people in your organization.
Yes, like we cover stories like everything surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement, what happened with Derek Chauvin. We cover the court system from time to time. We cover stories like, for instance, about prisons. Like a few years ago in Texas, there was a situation where people who were locked up in a Texas jail waiting to go to trial, they weren't found guilty yet. And if it was overcrowded, then there was a statute on the books that allowed the jail to send people to a facility where they're in solitary confinement, locked in 23 hours a day, and only come
Just
out
for
for
waiting
hours.
for trial?
Just for raiding. They didn't do anything wrong. They were
They
locked
have
in
been
there just
convicted.
because it was overcrowded.
Crowded.
And we
So there,
reported on that.
it's
Yes,
overcrowded, and so they go into solitary.
Yes,
That's what
they
they
go
do.
into
That's what-
solitary.
I'm trying to get that in my
Right, it
head.
is. So your reporting of that situation caused some changes.
Absolutely. That
Right.
caused the governor to look into it, and they changed it. It was a law that had been on the books since the 1800s that no one even looked at, and they just used it. And because of our reporting, something like that changed.
Excellent,
Wow.
excellent. And that, I guess that's what happens a lot of times when you bring focus to some issues. A lot of times it's a call to action from government. You know, even if it's the governors, city officials, whatever, they can bring focus to it to bring about change.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Lawrence, how did you get involved in this? What made you decide to get involved in the Martian Project and this whole thing?
Just tell
Well,
us your story.
Well, unfortunately, when I was 17 years old, I had got into trouble. I was shot 5 times when I was 14, and that led me
Shot 4 times.
Yeah, when I was 16 years old, and
Yeah.
and that led me down a horrible path, and I ended up getting in trouble, and I went to prison, and I stayed in prison for 27 years, and
27 years.
Yeah,
Oh.
it hurt. It hurt. It definitely hurt.
Oh my God, 27 years in prison.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Like
You don't look like
you
it.
don't
Yeah,
look
you
like
don't
22.
Like we say on our side, you don't look like what you've been through,
Not
brother.
at all, brother.
Well,
Not at all. You look
well,
good.
Well, thank you. I guess it don't crack, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
God is good.
You
Huh?
look blessed.
So you Don, you're in prison 27 years. How you make this transition then?
Well, I'm in there for 27 years, and I grew up there. I learned to shave there. A whole lot of things I went through while in there, but one of the things that I was blessed at is taking part in the college programming. I was able to earn a master's degree, and
While in prison?
yes, while in prison, I was thankful enough to have the opportunity to do that. And in doing that, I had to do quite a bit of writing. And so when it was my time to be up for parole, I was going through a tough time on parole. In New York State, for instance, at the time, a person goes to the parole board. Usually a person doesn't make his or her first parole board. And that person was expected to tell you have to come back in 2 more years to try to prove why we should let you out. And for a person to go to the parole board 5 times, I mean, the person would have to do an additional 10 years
10
since his or
years.
her first parole board. So I went to the parole board 5 times in 7 months, which was very weird. It was
Oh,
a
my
very rare
goodness.
thing.
Yeah.
And but going through all that, you know, if you can imagine, you know, you've been a different person for the better of 20 years, and everyone in the prison system knew me. They knew I was the type of person that was to do anything illegal, anything illicit, you know, and even the prison officials. But when I sat before the parole board, they didn't know me at all. So they was judging me based upon a piece of paper that somebody in the court wrote 27 years prior. And
Okay.
so they was judging me on that. And of course I wanted to get out for myself, but I really wanted to get out for my family. I was lucky enough to have a daughter. She was born 7 days after I was incarcerated, which is unfortunate, but
What?
fortunate to me.
This is
Yeah.
like a movie.
I know, right? And while I was incarcerated in New York State is one of 4 states that has family reunion program, which is a euphemism for conjugal visits. So I was able to get married, and I had 2 more children. So I had 2 young boys.
You did all this while you were in prison? And
Yes,
you've been in there since you were 7?
Yep.
Amazing.
Okay, well, keep going.
Okay. Well, so I'm telling you all that because when I went to the parole board, I didn't want to just get out for myself. I wanted to get out for my family because they was dependent on me, to come out to be the provider, to be the protector, to be the dad like everyone deserves. And so it was a lot of pressure on me when I was going to the parole board trying to convince them that I was this changed person. And a friend of mine said that I should write about my experience, like going to the parole board, how you change, but yet they don't believe you. And I had a series of duo. I went to the parole board. One commissioner say let me go. Another one say keep that person in prison. So it was deadlocked. So I had to go and try again the next month. Then it was postponed. Then I was denied. Then I appealed it and I won. And I had to go back. It was a big mess. So
Wow.
like I said, a friend told me
You're a little low. It's a little low.
Sorry. So like I mentioned, a friend.
That's good.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, a friend said I should write about it. So I didn't feel like writing about it at the time. I said, my experiences, it's just tough for me. I don't want to really write about that. But she said that when a person is going through something tough, particularly something emotional, it makes for the best pieces of writing. So I end up writing it anyway. And I also wrote it because there might be someone who is going through the same thing that's less articulate as I am. And if I could shine light on their situation, it could be helpful. And I was lucky enough to get it published by Martian Project, the stellar organization that win Pulitzer Prize.
Oh, okay. And now, how did they come? How did they get it? How did the Martian Project get your essay?
The friend that I was telling you about, she runs her name is Bianca Tyler. She runs a nonprofit organization called Worth Rises, and she would write these pieces for the Huffington Post, the Washington Post, and so she knew how to pitch pieces to different organizations to get them published, and she pitched my piece to the Martian Project, and they accepted it, and they published it 30 days before I was released. So when I was released, they asked me to come work for them, and the rest is history.
What? So the Martian Project, based on that essay, asked you to come work for them. I guess because what they do, you have a particular set of experiences and insight to write about it and to relate to people that are in that situation.
Coming from my standpoint, I just want to shout and praise the Lord and stuff. I mean, it's really a miracle that not only did you get out, you got a master's degree, and then you end up working for the Martian Project.
Absolutely. I count my blessings all the time.
Ooh.
Now, so now tell us about this project within the Martian Project that you started, and now you're the director of it. Tell us about News Inside.
Well, as people may imagine, well, first, let me back up a bit. The Martian Project, our content is public facing. It means you'll find it online in the internet. And when I got out, one of the first things that I was tasked with doing when working for the Martian Project is getting familiar with our work on our website, with what we do. So, mind you, the internet was created while I was incarcerated.
Wow.
That's why you don't have access while okay, I got you.
Yeah, I didn't have access. I didn't see, there's no internet in prison. So when I got out, I'm seeing it for the first time, and I'm looking at the Martian Project website. I'm like, wow, this stuff is cool. I mean, all this stuff was hidden for me. If I knew all this stuff while I was on the inside, I probably would have changed my circumstances. I mean, I would change things around the prison. I'd have been more enlightened. I think information is important. I'm a lifelong learner.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just knowing things and learning things and reading things, it has such an impact on your life, and it creates spaces for you to create other things. So when I saw it, I wish that my friends that were on the inside that were behind, they had the opportunity to see what I was seeing. So I spoke to a couple of folks at the Martian Project. They had always wanted to produce a print publication that people in prison would see it, but they didn't know how to do it. So I told them that I asked them all to meet me inside of a conference room, the leadership of the Martian Project, and I pitched them the idea of creating a News Inside, and I told them that because when I was incarcerated, I worked on something called the IOC, which is like a sort of incarcerated person's government as a go-between between the people that are in the institutions and the people who work and govern the institution.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and in that capacity, I learned the policy, I learned the directives, so I knew how to get printed material into the facility.
All
Because
right.
what people don't know is that the walls are not just meant to keep people in; it's meant to keep information out.
Nation out.
Right. So I remember just to get a newspaper, it was like a privilege. I mean, I used to pick it out of the garbage can because officers couldn't give us newspapers because they would get in trouble for promoting prison contraband. So
Oh.
I would get the newspapers like, wow, this is amazing, and so I used I used that knowledge, and 2 years ago I started News Inside, and right now News Inside is in over 557 facilities and 41 states throughout the country.
Wow. Amazing.
Lawrence, I just think how many Black men and women like you can be lost in the system. You're brilliant. I mean, and
Thank you.
I mean, you really are, and you've won awards and everything since you've gotten out of prison, but you could have been lost completely in the prison system. And but you're out now and doing all these great things with the Marshall Project. So, gosh, I mean, tell us some more of these.
So we're talking with Lawrence Bartley of the Martian Project. He's director of News Inside, a print publication that's distributed throughout our prison system in over 500 prisons and jails in 41 states. So that's who we're talking to, just to kind of, if anybody just joining us, they'll know what's going on.
Right, and we're doing this because Van Jones and his organization and Lewis L. Reed asked us to get this together for the Day of Empathy on
but
Tuesday.
help bring focus, like you're doing. Help bring focus.
Because you're blowing my mind. That's what people will tell
what's
you.
going on in our prisons today, and also in criminal, I call criminal injustice situations. And so so tell us some more about some of the work that impactful work that the Martian Project has done, or that you've been involved with at the Martian Project.
Well, there's a few things like the Martian Project. We're not an advocacy organization. Like we don't necessarily champion a certain cause, a certain reform. But what we do is, like our former editor-in-chief, the famed Bill Keller, always said, is we provide the oxygen for advocates and judges and attorneys and people like you all to use in order to bring about change, as they see fit. So the information is that oxygen. And to give you an example, one of my colleagues, Eli Hager, he reported on this story, and it's in the story's called. I wish I had a link I could put it here, but the story's called "The Hidden Trauma of Short Stays in Foster Care." And through his research, he found out foster care. He found out that, just to paint a picture for you, let's say there is a couple and there's a domestic dispute, and the police come to the home. Now, the woman may have been abused by her husband, but the police coming there and they go inside the pantry and they see that there's barely any food in the pantry, and it's infested with cockroaches, and there are 8 states in the country that allows police only to make the decision to remove the child from that home. Now,
just in those 8 states, the police can walk in and make that decision, and then there's no appeal process?
Yeah, there is. So what happens is that they remove the child. Imagine a woman she's beaten, and then not only cops get called, but her child gets taken away from her.
They're taking away the child. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
And the child is traumatized. I'm taken away from my mom. They're feeling they're being kidnapped. And the cops who take the child away, they do it without even going to a judge to get permission to do so. They have the
Right.
authority to do that.
Oh,
So
I
now,
see what you're saying.
right. So
Yeah,
now, while the child is away,
the police
yeah,
is
continue.
So the
go ahead.
police is the judge, basically.
Right,
When
they're
they've been
making that
called
decision.
into a situation.
in certain states they can do that.
And they just made the call in order to remove this child from the home. Now, afterwards, then a judge gets to look at the case, and social work goes and child protective services, they get to look at the case, and more times than not, they return the child to the home in less than 10 days. But
Okay.
by that time, the child has already experienced trauma that lasts throughout his or her entire life.
Yes.
And that's a horrible thing that many children believe has been happening to them. And we report on cases like that, and to bring it to light for people to chew it over and see what can be done. And one of the biggest culprits of this is Albuquerque, New Mexico. They're one of the biggest culprits of doing it. And you know, in any given year, 17,000 children get taken away from their parents in this way.
Wow.
Every
But see, that's very informative. I mean, so with that knowledge, people can try to affect change. Say in Albuquerque, if that's how they're motivated and led to do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I see. So this is, I mean, right now what you're doing really is all about storytelling, and we're learning and understanding some things that I didn't know. I feel traumatized just hearing the story. But yeah, so tell us some more about what's going on with how many people are in the Marshall Project that write stories? How many journalists are in there?
Don't get me to try to counting.
Okay.
We have about I think we have 44 employees in total, but not all of them are writers. We have, staff writers. We also have editors, and that's on the editorial side. On the business side, we have the communications department, we have the development, and we have the president, the CEO, and the CFO, et cetera, et cetera. But we're a nonprofit organization, so we get donations from the public and foundations in order to report.
Oh, I see. So that's the way you're funded, is through donations.
Exactly.
So just a heads up, I mean, just to know, I'm just reaching out to the folks here that, this is a nonprofit organization. They're doing great work. And if you feel led to support, this is a good place to support the Martian Project. We first became aware of the Martian Project through one of your board members, and that's how because we did some business with him, found out he was on the board, and he told us about the project, and then that's how we found out about you guys. So just
right.
Yeah.
So I've heard that you're what have you guys done with the Breonna Taylors and the Aubrey, what's his name, Aubrey Williams, and all of the shootings and killings? How have you guys been involved in that with writings?
We've been involved from the beginning to the end, sideways, upways, every way you could think of.
Because you write about it.
Yeah, we all the time, and we just don't like. We're investigative journalists. That's who we are. So our stories don't get quick turnarounds in one day. They take sometimes weeks or sometimes months to report on. So if you read our stories, there's a lot of in-depth information. Just for instance, let's talk about what happened with George Floyd. Recently, we did a piece that was on the cover of the New York Times as well, because we partner with different organizations, and our stories many times would appear on USA Today, the New York Times, various different organizations, and we reported a story out that the officer Derek Chauvin, he actually had a history of putting his knee on people's backs and necks, Yeah,
Really?
Oh, I
yeah.
remember that.
Okay. You remember that? Okay.
Right. He,
And,
he
and
he he did it quite often. There's a woman named Zoe Coda, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. I mean, Chauvin had his knee on her neck for a long, long, long time, and she
wow,
was trying to get him off her. And then when people who were accosted by this officer, they see what's going on in the media. They like, wow, that's my situation. There are even others in our story who say that I wish I would have pushed it more, or maybe that wouldn't have happened to George Floyd.
Floyd,
You know,
yes.
so some of their stories will be played out in this trial that's coming up. They will be up there testifying, and then the world will see what happens from there. And we also report on the Breonna Taylor story, um, the
Right,
reasons why
yes.
officers aren't charged, and in many other cases. But one thing I want to bring to light is this notion of qualified immunity, which is what officers have, which is why they don't get charged with some
Qualified immunity, you said it was?
qualified immunity.
I never
When
heard of that.
that's a term that's used all the time, that the courts use and different municipalities use to make sure officers don't get charged, or what prevents them from being charged or even found guilty of killing folks or sicking dogs on people to bite folks, etc., etc. Because basically while they're doing their duty, they have this immunity, and the rationale and the rationale behind it is that they won't, well, at least police officers like to use this, that they won't be able to act in accordance with, make split second decisions if they didn't have qualified immunity that can save other people's lives or bring about justice. But I mean, as some people would say, that they're misusing and abusing their qualified immunity, and they're using it as a shield to do what you see on television all the time.
That means that it's a much more, it's a greater responsibility on the policing organization to monitor that freedom that they have so that it's not abused. And I think that's really, from my perspective, I understand the logic, and they need to have some protection to do what they have to do, but you got to monitor and make sure that those that are not using rational sense in terms of how they use that power are appropriately accountable, are made accountable and taken care of. And so that to me is a big issue.
Absolutely. And even with Chauvin, like in the past, I believe they have dozens of complaints against him. They have a lot of complaints against him, I would say. And he was only disciplined once. He's only disciplined once. So, that's why a lot of people think that there should be some legislative action in order to bring about change. And that's why we report on the nuances of qualified immunity, so we get both sides, or anyone interested, all the tools they need in order to understand what that is and how that plays into all these not guilty verdicts, or these decisions to not charge individuals
Not
when
charge officers.
people get killed.
That's so true.
Wow. I was reading something I don't know if it was in the bio or in the Martian Project, something else I didn't think about before, which was the billing of families. Families are billed is this true? Am I understanding this right? That families are billed when their kids are in jail?
Oh yes, that
Talk
was
about that case, yeah.
Yeah, one of my colleagues wrote about it. I won't say that I'm well versed in it, but there was instances where children were taken away and they were detained, and the cost that the county or the state had to incur for detaining the individuals, they would bill the family members, and that's horrible. There's even go further. They're what they call debtors' prisons. Right. There's
Debtors
another
prison,
case.
really?
Say it again.
I said, really, debtors prison is still alive today?
Exactly. I mean,
I heard about it in my history books and stuff.
Oh, I didn't know.
You mean people? Wait. Okay, explain to me what debtor's prison is. Maybe I don't understand.
There's a case we reported on, a case of a woman in the South who owed the state some money, and she couldn't.
The state, okay.
She owed the state some money, so she couldn't pay, and they put her in prison to work it off until she paid it off. So
But at $2 an hour or $1.50 an hour.
I don't get this.
Well, but that's
Trump
what
owes everybody all over the place, and he's not in anybody's debtor's prison. I know I'm not trying to politicize, but I don't understand this.
To me, it's the same concept that if you have parking tickets, they can put out a bench warrant on you and arrest you and put you in prison because you haven't paid your parking tickets.
Yeah,
you owe the state. You owe the state. Right? Is that similar kind of thing going on there?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the same. It's the same concept. Her situation is a little different, but you got it right. It's the same concept. It's just that in certain states or counties would do things like that. But a lot of people are not surprised that it's happening in the South.
Oh, in the South, yeah.
But you have big corporations and guys who make millions, who I'm just like mad right now, and they're not going to anybody's debtors' prisons, and they owe and take millions from people. Help me, you guys, pray for me, because I'm upset right now.
The issue primarily is that people who are already in very low economic conditions in terms of their dollars, they're being put under these systems, and they're being further impacted by these kind of rules. Just like in Illinois, where they were writing traffic tickets in the Black community to raise funds for but it was
funds for what?
Disproportionate for a government part of the government budget, for the city government budget. So it was a disproportionate amount of ticket writing on groups of people that were already financially disadvantaged, and they were further taken. Then all the other consequences that come out of, they go to prison, all of this stuff, and this is being impacted on people that are economically disadvantaged.
Well, I guess we need to know about these things. But how do we find your stories? Do we have to wait until someone like Newsweek or something publishes them, or is there a
website? Is there a website?
On the MartianProject.org. The Martian Project spelled MAR, just like Marshall, Thurgood Marshall with 2 L's. The MARSHALL. The Martian Project is named after the late great Thurgood Marshall. And,
okay.
So it's the former Supreme Court Justice. So you can look on our website. We publish it all the time, and I would love for people, everyone to read our stories, and particularly your audience too, to read our stories, because a lot of communities of color are impacted by the things that go on in the criminal justice system. So it's better to learn from what's going on with others rather than learn from experience, because you don't want that experience.
I'm still trying to deal with the fact that you were in prison for all those years and got your education. I guess these are the kind of stories we really need to hear, and especially not everyone on here, but many of us are from the church. This makes me realize that there's a lot more that we need to do as well. So tell me some more of these stories.
Well, one thing that came to mind when we were just discussing it is that when you're talking about tickets that people get, one of my colleagues, Anna Flagg, she wrote a piece about the turnstile jumping in New York, and
well, explain that to all of us who aren't from New York.
Oh yeah,
well, he's gonna explain it.
We have train stations. Other cities have it as well. We have train stations that are subway system that are underground, and people use it to go to and from, to work, to home, wherever they need to go, and you have to pay, and then you go through a turnstile in order to get in. But we found that there were officers in New York City, police officers, looking in these rooms through these little slots, and they look out to catch people jumping the turnstile. But the problem is, they were looking out in areas where poor black and brown people live, like the Bronx,
Right.
etc. But areas like in Manhattan, the areas where there's a lot of traffic, Manhattan is like the business mecca, where people use the
They don't do
turnstile
it.
all the time. They're not there like that, but they're only they're in the black and brown communities disproportionately,
That's right.
and a lot of people took umbrage with that.
So what was happening to them if they got caught jumping the turnstile?
They get caught. They get paid. They have to pay a fine, and a lot of them are poor to begin with. They have to pay a fine. If you don't pay a fine, or some of them may have a warrant, or might escalate into a situation that you see many times when people have these minor encounters with police, and it begins people's journey in the criminal justice system.
Right.
Over jumping a turnstile.
Yeah.
Right. To being disenfranchised, and the lack of opportunity, and a whole host of things that happen to them. And a lot of times there are young folks who are getting targeted and being introduced to the criminal justice system this way. And something
from
like
jumping
that
a turnstile. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. Keep saying that.
That's all right. It's all right.
It's like they used to give jaywalking tickets to just the black folks.
Right.
Similar kind of concept where they oppress economically disadvantaged people.
Yeah.
Further, they're creating bigger separations. It's a problem.
And it happens. And
wow.
And even more so on another note, we hear about all these police shootings, but what we don't realize that dog bites occur too. Police dogs bite people more than police shoot people.
Wait. Hold up.
Well, I guess
we are now talking about dog bites.
I didn't even think about that. But
and there are more dog bites than what?
Than police shootings. There are more dog bites than police shootings in this country.
That's horrible.
And more
tell us more about that.
Y'all see the picture of them training the dogs to attack people, but they always have that big protection on. But now that you mention it, I guess they sick them on people that have no protection.
That's right. They sick them on people that have
tell me more about that, because I've never heard of this. I've never thought about it.
I didn't think about it either, man.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, and then first I want to preface it by saying some of these dogs have these outlandish names like Drago and Rambo, and these kind of dogs, and these are supposed to be the dogs of police that's meant to protect and serve.
To protect people.
Right.
Exactly. But yet they're biting a lot of people, and guess who they're biting the most?
Black and brown. Underserved, underprivileged, mentally ill.
Right,
you got it right. And more times than not, officers don't even get charged for it because of qualified immunity. And
the dogs don't get put down because they're police dogs.
Their job.
Are they under qualified immunity too?
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Definitely.
Dogs.
Yeah, a person hurt a police dog, that person is going to prison for a very long time. But that dog can bite a person and it'd be no problem. They say that the personality of the person with the dog goes down the leash to the dog. And the dog takes on a persona of an individual who's holding it. We have this video on our website. If you look at Mauled, the name of the story is Mauled, when police dogs are used as weapons. You would see have some video on there, but I would say that it's quite graphic. But
okay.
Yeah, but
Mauled. It's called Mauled.
Mauled. mauled when
Yeah.
police dogs are weapons.
So let me get this straight. I'm with my grandson. Somebody comes after me, and then the police get involved. The dog starts attacking me or my grandson. Now, if I kill that doggone dog with my stick or whatever I've got, I'm in trouble?
Yeah.
You in trouble.
You big trouble.
You're in trouble. Big trouble. Big
I never
trouble.
heard of anything like that.
They try to get you off, but
If you look, there's a video of a guy who had a problem with a person that's on a golf cart, caddying him around in a golf cart, and the police get involved. He's on the floor, and the police are telling him to lay on his stomach, but this dog is ripping at him, gnawing at his flesh on his side. He can't lay on his stomach. They're telling him to lay on his stomach, but he can't do it. So the dog is not going to stop until you lay on your stomach. So there are some graphic videos there. I don't want to get into too much detail.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be looking at all those. My brain is imagination is going with what you're saying. I never thought about. Yeah, well, that's why you're here. That's exactly why you're here, to make us aware of this. And I mean, what can we as a community do? About that. I get the day of empathy, so we're bringing awareness. What are some of the other things that you would recommend from the Marshall Project that we can do more than just being aware? I mean,
well, I think like the day of empathy, you have these smart folks like Van Jones and all these advocates that have many ideas on what people can do in order to take action in their community. But what we do in order to assist that process is to provide you all with the information so people can mobilize accordingly if they see fit, and to know what they're up against, because everything you do, you want to do it smartly. I mean, you want to know what's at stake. Just to take you back a little bit, when I talk about these dog bites, I think the public should realize that, for instance, when a police officer does something wrong, you usually see that the police officer don't get charged. But you see these civil suits where people get these payouts. You know, people try to do the same things with dog bites when they're bitten by police dogs. But juries are less apt to rule in a person's favor because people like dogs. And people like
dog that looks like Rin Tin Tin.
Exactly. And there's even a term for this. The effect that a dog has on a jury that makes a jury not rule against a dog. And it's called the Lassie Effect.
The Lassie, okay.
I'm done.
That makes it Lassie.
The Lassie Effect.
Lassie, but there's something called the Lassie Effect. So some dog could maul my grandkids, but they're young black men. Well, right now they're tiny, but when they become young black men, and Lassie has an advantage over my grandchildren.
Yeah, in the criminal justice system, unfortunately, that's the way it is.
That's why awareness is so important, so that you can appropriately mobilize action when necessary. It's the awareness that we need to have.
Absolutely.
Because some of the stuff you don't never think about it. We never think about it, but people are impacted by this all the time.
All the time.
You don't hear about it.
Well, I'm going to encourage, especially my faith-based friends and others as well, let your pastor, whatever your community groups, let them know about the Marshall Project, because I really didn't know that much about it, that we have a place to go where we can gather information. Is some of the information meted out by the city and state you're in, or does the information just come in?
Well, the information is on our website, but you can look at it. We have what's called a hamburger. If you look on the website, got these 3 lines in the left corner.
You got to bring your camera up, child. Your camera's too low.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go. And I can see. Now, leave it right
sorry.
there. Leave it right there. Are you holding it? Is that what's going on?
Yes, I'm holding it because when I prop it up, you can't hear me because it's blocking the microphone part.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Because
Right.
I want to see your fully melanin face. You're in a black car, and I want to make sure I can see all that melanin.
Are you good now? Can you see me
Yeah,
good?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm good now.
I'm
'Cause
mellowed
I
out. I'm mellowed
understand
out.
about that.
Yeah, so if you go on the hamburger part, you click it down, you see a search bar, and it's called a search bar. You can just type in, you know, a city, a state, or a topic, and what would happen is that something to come up relevant to whatever you're looking for. But
Okay.
what I recommend is that anyone who is interested in staying abreast, because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know, so it's
Right.
hard for you to search. But
Right.
I recommend that you look on our website and our newsletter. We have a newsletter called Opening Statement, which a person could just sign up for. It's free. You put your email in the address in there, and every morning you'll get little tidbits of criminal justice news. It'll be
Oh, okay.
in little paragraphs. You can read it. You can choose to click on the links and read the story, or you just get a quick update and you're good. And we also got Closing Argument, which is our weekly wrap up. We also got President's Brief, which every month you can get. Every 2 weeks you can get that. And we have a Life Inside newsletter, which is stories of people who are impacted by the criminal justice system. It's actually written by them. Like the story that I wrote, that got me to the Martian Project, was called The Life Inside. It was in that column. There are people who are incarcerated all over the country that writes it, and sometimes judges write it, attorneys write Life Inside, or even family members or people who are formerly incarcerated, they do the same.
Okay, so I mean, this is so interesting. So instead of getting someone on the outside perspective, like you see on the movies and all of that, y'all are talking about what's going on. So I mean, where are we for the? You got any more? We got time for one more story, though. You got one more story for us?
Well, I got something real quick about what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, tell me what you're doing. Yes.
I already told y'all about a print publication, News Inside. But what I found in doing News Inside is I came across a study that says only 40% of the incarcerated population in the country can read. So
literacy issues.
Right. So I have a problem with that because I would put News Inside in there. I want people to read the news to stay abreast, of what's going on in the system and what can be useful to them. Like, for instance, give you two quick examples. There could be a person in Arkansas that read something in News Inside about a theater program called Rehabilitation Through the Arts, that where people are in prison performing Shakespeare plays. They have these elaborate sets and costumes. It gives a person hope because 95% of people who are incarcerated, they're going to be released someday. So you should want someone that's cultured, someone that has confidence, someone that has some skills to come out of prison than someone to come out of prison worse off than they were when they went in.
Right.
Wow.
So a person in Arkansas could see that story and say, wow, they don't have this in the institution I'm in. Let me write a proposal to the administration and use this as evidence that this works. So that's one of the purposes of News Inside from my perspective. But like I said, only 40% of the population can read according to this study. So what I did is I'm creating something new along with my colleague Donna Washington called Inside Story, which is a video version of News Inside, or like the daily, like the New York Times
video.
has,
Okay.
right. Like what we do is we go behind the scenes of reporting, and I host the show and I interview some of our amazing reporters about what they found when they go and report in these stories and these little behind the scenes pieces. And we also interview some of the subjects of the story. In the next 2 weeks, we got a Inside Story coming out, being launched to the community, into the world rather, in the next week or two. And I hope everybody just look on our site for it and be locked in. And that will be broadcasted in prisons and jails across the country, and it also
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Well, we've got Pastor Pastor Sandra Crouch, you know Sandra and Andre Crouch, she's on. She says she's interested, and I know she has a very, of course, strong church. And Nuwani and Lyles, they're wanting to know, is there anything? Nuwani wants to know if there's anything specifically on the West Coast, or is it all coming out of New York or Connecticut? Or
And then I have a question too.
It is a lot on the West Coast. It's everywhere. We have a lot of stories on the West Coast. A lot of those dog bite stories that I mentioned, it happened on the West Coast.
Get out of town.
Yeah, that's a lot of the West Coast. Our reporter, Abby Van Sickle out there, she's the one that wrote that story, along with Jamal's Latte. And there's a lot of stuff on the West Coast, a lot of stuff in the South, the Midwest. We cover the country. There's no part of the criminal justice system in the United States of America that we are not looking to cover.
And if we want to get involved, because as I say, we've got some powerful people that are that watch the show, and they want to know specifically, especially we've got some pastors, Pastor Jerome Bell and some others that want to know specifically how can they get their church involved with this invitation. Okay, so they get this information and then go where?
And then they pass it amongst their...
They need to decide which actions they want to take, because that's not their organization.
Theirs is to get the information out to us, so we have the information.
Right.
Well, exactly. Now, what will make me happy? Continue. I'll finish. Go get it.
No, I think some of the things that, directions we can go is that we can, get together. We identify people who have interests, and then we can kind of coordinate that and say, hey, what are the things we're interested in, see if we can mobilize something locally to do something.
Wow. Yep.
I think that's the information that you're giving us. We say, and people say, hey, I'm interested here. Let's do that.
Yeah. I had a question. Do you guys have any financial literacy programs that are offered within the prison system? Is there anything?
Well, they would do the articles.
I mean, but is that something that can be done like the art programs?
Yeah, I mean, art programs are definitely needed in prison. Financial literacy is as well. But, like your mom was just saying, we don't do that, but there are a lot. I know in personal experiences that there is a lot of need for it. I know guys who are incarcerated. A friend of mine who's incarcerated, he does those programs himself. He has limited resources. He just does research on his own. He has a group of guys that come down every Saturday, and he teaches financial literacy. And I would suspect that that's a need all over the country. So if people who are watching this feel the desire to make something like that happen, we're all in the same network. Maybe they can reach out to me. I could probably connect you to folks who can make that happen. And then the research.
We'll have to post this information and also ask Van Jones, because the Day of Empathy is on this Tuesday, and we'll go back, and Mr. Reed, is that his name? Mr. Reed?
Lewis Reed.
Mr. Lewis Reed as well, and ask them, because we've got people here that are doers. They are doers, like at Pastor Sandra Crouch and some of the other names I'm seeing. There's Monifa and some others. They're going to hear this and want to know exactly what they can do, because this program is a call to action to us. And so as a church community, we're getting fired up. I'm still thinking about dog bites, and
but I think your Van Jones organization will show us where we can plug in, because he's got the a structure to do something. But I have a question, and I've heard
this will be like our last question. Yeah.
But and this, I've seen a couple of YouTube videos on it, and it's the whole role of artificial intelligence in sentencing, and how judges use artificial intelligence programs to identify but a lot of these don't take into consideration, people's particular situations and stuff like that.
Wait a minute, I don't know what you're talking about.
Can you?
Artists, the computer is what you
They have programs that assist judges in sentencing folks that come in. So they just
put all the stuff in the program, and the program decides.
Gives them so you think this is how much they should be sentenced. Do you have anything like that? Have you guys written anything like that on the
It'd
Martian
take my
project?
husband, the Martian, to think about something like that.
No, I don't recall us writing anything about that.
Okay.
We need to then.
What you remind me of are these risk assessment programs where they assess the risk of a person committing a new crime, and they use that when a person goes to the parole board to see, do these tabulations, whether this person is more apt to commit a crime, whether this person can be homeless. I mean, they base upon what support you have, how many visits you got while you were in
so
prison.
you put it in a computer.
So if the parole board uses that information to see, that's an AI program.
Yeah.
That's an AI program. And so parole boards are using it. Judges use it. So that's very, because it doesn't take into consideration specialty cases like yours. Things like that. It just says, oh, this is what should be, blah, blah, blah. And it really ends up impacting a lot of minorities,
Right, because of their statistics mean certain things to the program.
And AI is not always, it's good, but you guys need, anyway, there's potential issues there. There's potential issues. I'm just wanting to know whether people have addressed that but it's called, what was you would call it? It's called a risk assessment program is what that's called?
Yeah.
That they use? Okay, interesting.
Well, brother, my mind is totally blown. We're going to have you back on because I just need to rest with this stuff. I don't know about the rest of you, from dog bites to you were in prison in 27 years, and people can't read in prison, and oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to pray on this stuff, and more than pray, I'm called to action. I'm definitely called to action, but I want to know what things I should do. I think I'm gonna have to call Sandra because Sandra and
we'll get with on the Day of Empathy. They'll provide other ways to plug in.
Yeah.
In terms of and we can take advantage of that, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel in certain ways, but we can go ahead and plug in where we need to plug in to help.
Yeah, we want to thank you so much. Will you come back on again? Because I know you have so much more to talk about. My brain is fried.
You got to go through the
Absolutely.
The authority.
When you need me, just call. I'm here.
Okay, and some of the other churches.
He's got the new. Just repeat the new program you call the video piece. What was that called?
Inside Story. Please be on the lookout for it. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on our website. We're going to write about it. Inside Story.
And we'll put it on ours.
We put it on. So we go out there and we subscribe. We subscribe to the newsletter and also to some of these other things too.
And we want to thank you again so much for being on, and you may want to join us too for this little something uplighting. Even though this was enlightening as well, we're going to have Dorinda Clark call on. And we're going to shut down for a second and go right back to Dorinda. You should come on so you can say hi to Dorinda.
Sure.
Dorinda Clark Cole has got some things going on. And so thank you so much.
Thank you, Lawrence.
You're welcome.
Lawrence Bartley.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
We're family now.
Family.
Pepper pot stew.
Pepper pot, man.
We'll keep in touch with you.
Slop that up, man.
We're ready for that dinner party.
So we're going to go off for one quick second, and we're going to come right back on with Dorinda Clark Cole. But thank you again, Lawrence. God bless you, and we're going to keep thinking and praying for you. Thank you so much for your work.
Amen.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Hello, what's up?
Thank you so much for watching Carfitable Talks.
Thank you.
Please remember to press that like button, and we need you to subscribe. And also,
leave some comments. We really need to hear from you.
Thank you.